Good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. Today, we will be discussing race, racism, psychology. What is the African conscious? What is the Black African conscious movement? Joining me today is Dr. Bayou and Deontay Carter.
Hello.
Good
Good morning.
morning
Good
and
morning.
welcome. So I'm going to let you tell the viewers a bit about yourself before we get into the subject matters. I'll start with Dr. Bayo. Is
Well,
Bayo or
first,
Bayo?
Dr. Bio, but Dr.
Bayo.
BCW is the easiest because I have such a long last name. Um, First, thank you, Sonia, for having me. I am so excited to be here. I am a family medicine and urgent care physician, board certified, and also medical director of a couple of hospital systems here in Reno, Nevada. And so, my passion and joy is really raising awareness in hopes of reducing health inequities and disparities. And I'm also the founder of Beyond Clinical Walls, which is a video and podcast series that shares health information, health equity, and diversity and conversation through social media. So it's my honor to be here and share health information. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. It's our pleasure to have you on the show today. And I'll now introduce you to Deontay Carter.
Good
And share
morning,
with the audience a
everyone.
bit about yourself.
Yeah, yes. But good morning, everyone. My name's Deontay Carter. I'm a military veteran that served 5 years in the United States Marines, 3 years and 3 months in the United States Army. I wanted to dive deep into helping our culture, the African American Black culture, by doing victim advocacy. So I've been doing victim advocacy for 3+ years, helping survivors of sexual violence seek advisement, get the help that they would need through services. I'm just finished my bachelor's in psychology, just starting my master's in clinical mental health counseling, as well as clinical oh goodness, I'm drawing a blank. Basically, I would be doing clinical rehabilitation counseling, but then also I'm going to be going for my doctorate in psycho psychological supervision. So it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be able to help. Sounds like I got a frog in my throat. This crazy weather in Ohio has been doing quite doing quite the number on my health as far as it goes. So look forward to this conversation.
Thanks for joining us. I am Sonia Burt. I'm a licensed spiritual practitioner with Centers for Spiritual Living in Colorado. And what I do is basically work with persons from that psychological and soul trauma that they would have experienced. That's what I focus on, the from a psychological perspective, but yet still spiritual and from the soul, going deep into traumas from wherever they would have arrived from. Today, as I said, we're discussing race, racism, psychology. What is the African Black conscious movement? And I'm going to start with Deontay. Could you give me a definition for, or share with me your definition for Black consciousness? What does it mean to you?
Well, excuse me, black consciousness to me, I just feel like it is having the awareness of your culture, having the awareness of what you bring to the table as a professional, as a person, through the African American experience, um, Black experience, but then also being very transparent of what the vantage is out in the public world of how and be realistic about what disparities are out there against our culture, but then also being able to channel and being able to provide some hope and opportunity for our culture through various different measures of pointing, being able to guide services for anyone that is in pretty much a place that is leaning towards trauma regarding anything that's regarding with that's happening in the public, whether it's police brutality, whether it is gross practices with being not treated the way that you would want to be treated in medical or a professional realm of expertise. So just being well-rounded of who we are as a community, as a culture, as a melting pot, but then also being there to help in the process of what disparities are within society through societal norms.
Thank you, Deontay. And Dr. BCW, what is your take on Black consciousness? How would you define Black consciousness?
I really like to hone in on health because that's my realm. And so I'm going to really spearhead it to that piece. And so as Deontay mentioned, it's that what we carry with ourselves as far as knowing as being Black and African or whatever ethnicity or race that you identify with. And so when we talk about Black consciousness and we talk about health, there are so many different things that we really have to face in the healthcare system. And so by that, I mean, when we go in and seek care, how are we perceived? And we think about it and we carry it with us, each time we're trying to get help for ourselves. And so for me, it's really important to find ways to remove race-based algorithms and so forth that are really exacerbating the things that we have to carry in our Black consciousness. So that's what it means to me in the health realm, and really trying to find ways that when we seek care, that we are seen as an individual, as well as, although our race we should be prideful for and so forth, but it shouldn't impact how we get care or seek care. And that's what I'm hopeful for, that when we see somebody in the healthcare system, that our treatment is the same as everyone else, that the color of my skin does not decide what type of care I should get.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to go to my next question, which is the Black Power movement and the Black consciousness the same? Can you expand on that a bit? Deontay?
Yes. From what I was pretty much how I've dealt with it, it's similar but different. But those differences shouldn't be something looked at as barriers. There is someone that I looked that there is Dr. Kimberly Williams Crenshaw. She's from Canton, Ohio. She came up with the concepts of intersectionality, and I really feel like it shouldn't, because if our mental health isn't together, our physical health is going to plummet if we're not, and vice versa. So it's that much more important to be able to have that balance of saying it is okay to come to a practitioner that is well versed with mental health to help you through arduous times regarding trauma. But then also too, if on the physical aspect, letting something physical linger can potentially be can harm the mental health as far as it goes. So I bring up Dr. Kimberly Williams Crenshaw because we as human beings, we as African Americans, African, whatever our nationality we identify is, it's going to be crossed with so many different intersections. So take me for instance, I'm an African American man. I'm a student. I'm a disabled veteran, TBI survivor. It's just there's so many intersections that affect how I am being received, but how I interpret myself based on societal norms. So there's just so much to unpack with how you're being looked at and received in society, and it shouldn't be there shouldn't be anything disparate. There shouldn't be any disparities with that, being that there are different walks of life that have disabilities, that have mobility or cognitive issues that affect their well-being. So to tie this into the question you had asked, Black consciousness with the Black Power movement, I just feel like these are two entities that are doing their best to service the community within the African diaspora as far as it goes, and being able to advocate for our wellness and well-being, but then also tying it into how consciously we should be accepting ourselves, and not really diving into the societal norms of pretty much looking down and basically taking, adding those stereotypes and barriers to who we are as people. We shouldn't pay attention to that. We should focus on who we are as people internally, but then also having people that's going to advocate and rally with you. So then it wouldn't be, your mental health and physical health won't be so much in peril.
Thank you, Dr. Deontay. Dr. B, I'm going to go to question 3 for you. And I want to allow you to bring your health aspect into it. This question deals with the different shades of Blackness and Black identity, especially in cases with mixed races. How do you see the difference in races as it relates to the health industry? Because sometimes you find people who are biracial, multiracial, and the others are Black, as in Black that you can identify as Black, treated any different from a Black who's identified as a light Black? Are there those differences within the healthcare system?
I love this question, Sonia. I think, when you talk about different forms of being Black, shades, and so forth, I think it's important that we start from the definition. And why I say that is because right now, unfortunately, we are enveloped. We are grouped together, and certain treatments are based on the color of our skin. And so when we talk about race, it's important that we highlight that it's a social construct. It's not biological and it's not genetic. And so when you take that in and you think of that definition, but then you look at right now with healthcare and a lot of things that are being put forward, there's this. And I'll give a great example. Often with certain diseases, let's say diabetes or hypertension, sometimes you'll hear the term that's a Black disease, or that we are at increased risk because we are Black. Well, I like to go back and share that when I mention that definition, just because I'm Black, the color of my skin does not increase my risk for having diabetes. Because when we think of family history and genetics and ethnicity, that is completely different. And so it is important to me as a physician to see patients individually and not treat them based on the color of their skin. I still think about family history and ethnicity. And so when you mentioned, the shades of black and how does that really interplay with the healthcare system, unfortunately, right now, we have so many race-based practices that are impacting Black lives every day. And for one example that I talk about in my recent TEDx talk that I did, I talk about a lab study called the GFR, which stands for glomerular filtration rate. At this time, there is a difference between Black and non-Black. And so I talk about in my TEDx talk that Black kidneys and white kidneys are exactly the same. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. And so why I'm highlighting this test that I feel needs to be removed is because it states that a Black person's kidneys are healthier than somebody who is non-Black. So why is that a problem? If someone's kidneys is considered healthier just based on the color of their skin, it puts them at a disadvantage for a diagnosis sooner. And we know right now that Black people are dying at a disproportionately higher rate of kidney disease. So if you have a test that when you get your blood drawn, your kidneys are considered healthier just based on the color of your skin, you won't be able to get on the kidney transplant list or have medications as soon as other people. And so that is why I like to highlight these tests that often people are not aware of. And so going back to your question, the color of our skin should not be a determinator of what type of care we receive.
I agree with you on that. Totally agree with you on that. I'm going to bring the question back to Deontay in its original form, and that is, there are varying shades of Blackness and Black identity, especially in the case of mixed races. And I would have posted an article in the chat on a town in, I think it's Idaho, where there are persons who are physically white, but who identify as Black. And I found that to be very interesting in that you can look at them and you can see that they are white, but yet still because of their family history, their heritage, they have been identified as Black. And coming out of that article, one lady was saying, my mother states that I am Black, therefore this is how I identify. And one of her daughters chose to identify as white, and her argument was, I have blue eyes, that makes me white. Although going back into the American history, that one drop of Black, I Black. And I'm asking Deontay to share your thoughts on this and the psychological impact that this would have on a group of people who are visibly of one race, but yet still identifying with another. What are your thoughts on this from a psychological perspective?
The psychological perspective of identity, it's quite frankly is rooted into your heritage and how you grew up and what you were around. So if someone feels as if they have been rooted in African American heritage, no matter the shade of their skin, they shouldn't be criticized or ostracized because of the lineage that they were able to identify through DNA or what have you, through whatever services that is a company to utilize and find out your ethnicity, your culture. So it's ultimately dependent on that person that identifies as such, but then also it's not. There's a lot of society-based. There's just so much society-related that is tied into how someone identifies, and the scrutiny behind it sometimes either keeps that person from talking and basically keeping to themselves about how they identify, or there are different organizations that help with being able to explore and make it be known that it's okay to identify with your culture, but it shouldn't be a topic that is looked down upon, being that it is a part of someone's identity. And if someone wants to identify as such, they shouldn't be criticized or ostracized by other cultures, and basically let down or put down because of how they identify.
I think what I wanted to hear was, is there a psychological terminology for persons who identify as white when they're Black, and for persons who identify as Black when they're white? And what I'm hearing is that I know it's a tough question. Even for me, it is a tough question. But I know in the USA you have so many issues with race and who belongs to what races. Whereas here in Barbados, if racism does exist, and I believe it exists, it's very subtle.
Well, that's the thing.
I know that.
I'll go ahead. No, I was going to pretty much what I was going to say was I'm just starting out as an MED student for to become a counselor. So it's we haven't really dived too deep into the psychological aspects of how a person identifies. We're basically at the bare roots of how someone identifies and respecting their barriers, not so much barriers, but respecting their space for how they identify. So it's more or less, I don't want to give the wrong answer. I don't want to put out false information regarding how someone identifies. I'm going based off of what I'm being taught, and how everything, how it is accepted as, for someone that is of different culture. So I just didn't want to put out any false information.
Fair enough. I respect that. Dr. BCW, I know you said you're here for a short while, so I'm going to ask you this question. And that question is, how do you see diversity, inclusion, and equity in the healthcare system where you're living and working currently?
So when I think of diversity, at least where I live, we are very poor in diversity in my area. And I'm speaking from a Black female physician perspective. And so we need more representation throughout the country. And where I live, there are not, and I don't want to give a specific number, but it's about less than 10 Black doctors, Black physicians where I live. And so there is a need, not only where I live, but across the country, to have more representation. And then when I think of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I can't not say, often we hear about social justice and all of the things that are happening in this time, which have been wonderful. But I really encourage people to think about health equity and social justice coming together, because there are so many different intersectionalities that are at play. Because as Deontay mentioned, we have all of this great movement, but we also need to look at what's happening as far as racism in healthcare. And so if we don't look at the inequities and disparities and the racism that's happening within the healthcare system, and we only focus on social justice, we're missing a huge piece that needs needs to be a part of this movement. And so I think of DEIB should include health equity, because I often say your health, mental and physical, is your most prized possession. And so as we're making headway with social justice, health equity needs to be a part of that. So I hope, in the near future that health equity is a part of the conversation, because that part needs to happen in every aspect as we're trying to improve or move that needle in DEIB work. And so I appreciate you, Sonia, for having me. Sorry, I have to leave. But I do want to state, if anyone would like more information about some of the race-based practices that I mentioned, please take a look at my TEDx. I know Sonia, I believe, has the link. I'd love to share it, because it's all about the more you know, the more you can advocate for yourself each time you seek care. And so in my TEDx, I talk about several race-based practices that are there, as well as I have free content available through my series Beyond Clinical Wall. And I talk about a plethora of diseases. And my goal is just to help people in any way that I can.
Thanks so much for being Dr. BCW, and I'll definitely share your information on my own social media platforms so that we can get the word out there about healthcare and the need for Black persons to advocate for their rights as human beings to have adequate healthcare.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us today. Have an awesome day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye. Okay, that was Dr. BCW, and she's new to our broadcast, but she has her own TEDx show. I'm going to make sure and post it so that persons can take a look at the work that she's doing on the behalf of people of color. So that leaves Deontay and myself to carry this discussion forward.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to go back to the biracial, because I know that when I did my research and I read on Stephen Biko, who more or less started the Black consciousness awareness movement in South Africa, that he included Asians and other people who were non-Black. And I know that the world is changing. We're interacting more and more with each other. So my question is, are you feel a lot of interracial relationships? My question is about biracial people. And I know from being on a diversity, let me call it diversity, inclusion, and equity program, I listened to one of my own daughters talk about her experience as a biracial person and the feelings that she has encountered. In your work, have you encountered persons who feel that they don't belong, but they just straddle in the fence? They belong nowhere because they're biracial. Have you encountered that? Have you had a discussion with them on their feelings?
For the most part, it was more geared towards being a multiracial populations. People, they felt that they can identify with both, at least up here in the state of Ohio. Some of the people that I have talked with and had conversations with as a victim advocate, they identified as biracial, multiracial, and they were able to, there are some that would just strictly stick with African American, but then there are some that would feel multifaceted by just being able to dive deep into not only African American culture, but Native American if that's part of their culture, Asian or Hispanic. So it at least in Ohio, it's more or less there's people that are wanting to get a full understanding of what is all connected with their culture, after doing like a DNA test and being able to see that, okay, I'm this percentage of Hispanic, this percentage of African American, or better yet, of Nigerian or Senegalese, what have you. So they would want to get an idea and understanding of how that culture is viewed and recognized, and different customs that are tied in with that culture. So I don't now in a society perspective, there has been some issues regarding like how someone disregards how they want to be identified. Now that is something that is happening in Ohio, where someone that says, hey, I prefer to be considered biracial or multiracial, what have you. So some society groups would just disregard and just choose not to.
What I wanted to hear was the psychological impact of as though I don't belong anywhere, especially maybe in situations where grandparents, let's say you are biracial, black and white mix, and your Caucasian grandparents do not accept you. You're not come to the or you are ostracized because you're black. Let's say that is a situation. Have you in your studies come across situations like that?
I have not yet, but I have heard friends of friends that have dealt with something similar, as such, having other family members basically say, well, my son, my daughter consorted with someone of a different ethnicity. We don't accept that, and we don't view you as family. It's more of, I haven't dealt with that within the professional realm of what I have been doing, but there has been stories that other professionals that have dealt with scenarios that you just mentioned.
Because I'm thinking of this psychological impact. I mean, we're dealing with Black mental health matters, and I mentioned earlier about a community of people who look white but say they are Black. How would you, as a practitioner, a mental health practitioner, deal with someone coming to you? I mean, you're dealing with Black mental health issues, and someone comes and say, I am Black, I'm coming to this particular person because they will understand me. But then before you, the picture that you've seen is that of a white person. How do we as mental health care workers who say we're focusing on the mental health of Black people, how do we then deal with persons who identify as being Black but look white? How do we really embrace that idea? Or are our biases going to get in the way and we treat them as other than what they say they are?
At least for me, although I'll have that bias within me, I keep that. I have that in control. So it's one of those things that if someone that is a lighter skin tone that can basically look like they are Caucasian and they identify as African American, I'm not going to get in the way of their of that premise that they uphold. I'm going to respect that they identify as such. I'm not going to it would be something to where I wouldn't scrutinize them by saying, well, I need to see DNA and all this other. That's just not me. I just, as a practitioner, I would respect the fact that if they identify as such, that's how they identify, and I'm not going to. It's not anything to where I would want to scrutinize their credibility regarding how they identify. But if they're coming to me with issues that they're dealing with regarding how they're being viewed, it's something to where as a counselor, I would want to just make it be known that don't be discouraged from how you identify if someone else is telling you no. It's something that you continue to explore, being that this is a part of your identity, and you shouldn't it shouldn't be something that someone else or society is going to be the determining factor by saying, oh, well, although you identify this way, we don't see you that way, and we don't care how you feel. And it's like this. That's talk that I would advise, not so much advise, but suggest that they just would need to have resiliency around being able to not listen to that kind of language from someone within family or society that's around them.
I asked that question because when we think of racism, it always appears as though racism is a white person's issue, that white people are racist. And I asked that question to see how we're thinking, what our biases are. Are we too racist? Am I racist in my outlook on life, or am I being prejudiced in my outlook on life in terms of the clientele that I want to see and how I'm going to treat clients? Am I going to put up a banner that says just this group only, and if you're white, I can't see you? Because racism is a very serious issue across the world, and how we show up as mental health practitioners in terms of healing the minds of people, in terms of bringing people to that place where they are whole and can accept each other where they are. I think it's important that we look at our own biases. How am I showing up as a practitioner? How am I showing up as another human being dealing with the others? Am I going to promote the separation, or am I going to promote the idea of diversity, inclusion, and equity across the board? Because yes, we're dealing with Black mental health matters, but how we show up is very important also.
And I agree.
I guess essentially we need to get our biases in line, bring our biases in line, heal ourselves first of the prejudices that can hinder us from really helping others to understand the big picture here. The big picture here is to heal not just a handful of people who are suffering from mental health illness, but to heal the world in general so that we treat each other better. Because most of our issues in terms of mental health stems from the way we are treated by people in our environment. When we start to internalize and take that on, and then we become dysfunction because somebody said, hey girl, you're fat, and I take that on and I become depressed because somebody thinks I'm fat and ugly. So basically our biases need to be checked when we're dealing with mental health. The truth is, as we see around the world, people are identifying. People are deciding where they want to fit in. And this is not just a color issue. This is also an issue of outside gender. So indeed with issues like this, because what Black consciousness is really defined as is finding your identity, learning about who you are, earlier, learning about who you are at the core of your very being. And when I look back at what some of the Black conscious leaders promoted, it was basically a mindset. It was like changing the way you are thinking about who you've been told you are. I know specifically in South Africa, Blacks were treated in such a way that they were called boy and girl and they were given most menial jobs to do. They were not allowed to express their greatest potential. And I'm going to bring this back to my own practice as a spiritual practitioner. Because if you're saying to a human being, you're made in the likeness and image of God, all that God makes you are, and then you take another human being and say, no, this is only for a selective few. That deep spiritualization of the Black has also contributed to the economic and financial status of Black people around the world, on the African continent. And I think that we have struggled really hard to gain economic power. For me and where I sit has to do with working with the mind, healing the soul of trauma, teaching people to believe in themselves, teaching people to understand that to be Black and that Black does not mean that you are not worthy of all the good there is in the world. And with that, I'm going to ask this question to you. In an ideal world, what would mental health look like from a Black conscious person?
I feel like from a Black consciousness perspective is having that level of acceptance to each person and how they identify and how it shouldn't be the severance of well, this only applies to this person because you identify this way or whatnot. But there are certain things. There's going to be certain portions of how someone identifies that is only for a certain population. So take me for an example. I am I had a traumatic brain injury, and there's certain cares, there's different kinds of treatment and therapies that I have to go through versus someone else that identifies as, because I identify as multiracial, being that I have just a wide range of different races within who I am. And it shouldn't be, there's going to be certain things that are impairments, disabilities that are on different people that there's going to be that aren't going to be with, say, for instance, yourself or someone else. It's not going to be anything to where you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to have that it's not going to be something that is going to be uniquely everyone is going to have a unique set that they identify with, and it just depends on who on what disability or any kind of accommodations that are tied in with who that person is. But then also the accessibility of that should not be disenfranchised. So if someone is saying, hey, I have, I'm a double amputee, that someone's blackness, someone's skin color should not be the qualifier. They should look at the disability, they should look at the impairment, but there shouldn't be that identifier saying, well, you're of African descent, this exacerbates this to a certain degree. That has nothing to do with it. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. If I have an impairment, I am just like anyone in the society that's seeking help for an impairment or a disability. That's where the line should be drawn, but in a consciousness perspective, recognizing that we as people have dealt with different things and have historically, and then within what's going on today in today's world, are dealing with disproportionate kind of topics regarding racism, redlining here in the United States, disallowing someone to not be able to get a home and be able to get a home and get a home loan, and because of a certain neighborhood, because of the color of someone's skin. And it's like, that shouldn't be an identifier in that way to basically segregate societies.
Thank you, Deontay. I'm going to share some of the comments posted in the chat. Eyes Wide Open 360 said, love what Dr. BCW said previously regards doctrine disease to a race. And there was another one here. Yeah, thanks for sharing that kidney example. And I think that was really great of her to share that kidney example. That was awesome. Because very often you hear that this is a Black disease, this is a white disease, this is a Chinese disease. And the human body, as we know, they're all constructed primarily the same way. And with that, I would like to share with our audience, I don't know where I'm getting some resources that they can go to, and they can, that is the book called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Daniel Tatum. Another book I suggest people read is Blind Spot by Mazarine Banaji and Anthony Greenwald. There's also he's not Hakeem. Ibram Kendi. He writes a lot of good books on racism. And I would also like to suggest that you can do your own follow-up with Stephen Biko and Marcus Garvey and the role that they played in the African Black Conscious Movement, and see how someone in South Africa and someone who's out of Jamaica living in the US, they have contributed to the Black Conscious Movement, making us aware that we are human, that we have the same feelings as other people, and that we basically need to change our mindsets about who we have been told we are by other people and start to live as who we know we are. And I would like to also mention one of our greatest advocates for Black Conscious Movement and change, and that is the late Bob Marley, who sang the song Redemption Song, which basically told us to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And I think that is one of our biggest challenges, moving from a mindset of lack and insufficient and inferiority to a mindset of I am equal to any other race on this planet. And I also suggest that you take a look at a movie called Imitation of Life. I do not remember the name of the stars for that show. It's a very old show, probably still in black and white. But this is a story that highlights the life of a young woman who is passing for white. Her mother is black, and her mother with a white lady, right? Best friend, black and white females as best friends. But in the story, this girl rejects her mother because she's black. And another black figure I would like to highlight her list is Freddie Washington, who was an actress who refused to ask for white to get parts in acting. And I mentioned in her, if you see pictures of her, you would think, oh, that's a white woman. But she identified as black and refused to pass for white. And this is about understanding your identity. This is what Black consciousness is about. Understanding who we are and not feeling ashamed for being Black. So with that, I'm going to ask you, Deontay, to share your final thoughts on the topic today, which is race, racism, and psychology. What is the African Black Conscious Movement?
Well, I wanted to share. I had the pleasure to meet Dr. Bernice King. She runs the King Center. She is the youngest daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King, and she has a book called "It Starts with Me." And she is the author of this book, and it's pretty much highlighting the topics that we have talked about. The acceptance of who we are and our identities, and there's a beautiful illustration on the back where it's just a melting pot of just different nationalities. And I really want to just mention that it shouldn't be anything to be where our race should not be alienated, or any other race should not be alienated and looked at as a community, a culture, a population that is that much different. So then it shouldn't be that authorization to have different kinds of treatment towards different races. So again, I just I really wanted to just share that Dr. Bernice King had a powerful message to just continue to push forward and to just do everything in a nonviolent way. And she coined the term Nonviolence 365 to just advocate for being able to represent our culture, represent ourselves in the proper way, and stop societal issues that are pretty much ostracizing us because of the color of our skin. So it was truly a pleasure to be able to meet Dr. Bernice King.
Thank you, Deontay. It is at this time I wish to thank the audience who joined us and supported us by being here online with us, for tuning in to Black Mental Health Matters. It is through you that we are promoting the idea that we matter, Black mental health matters. If you have a society of persons who are mentally well, you're going to have an extremely productive society. And this is the hope that I have for all humanity, not just for Black persons, but for all humanity, that we are mentally well, that our mind is in a great place. And with that, I'm gonna just say this to each and every one of you here: heal your mind, heal your life. Thanks for tuning in and listening.